Hello. Welcome back to Lesser Known Monsters, where we take a look at the worst humanity has to offer. Now, before we get started, I do want to warn you that the following content may be disturbing. On this episode, we'll take a look at the crimes of Randy Kraft, a sadistic psychopath that murdered at least 16 young men in an 11-year period. When he was finally caught, law enforcement found a strange, cryptic list of seemingly random words in Kraft's possession. After some examination, police were able to decode many of the writings on the list, and what they found was what seemed to be a list of victims, a scorecard, if you will, which is why Randy Kraft was deemed the scorecard killer.
Randy Stephen Kraft was born on March 19, 1945, the only son and youngest sibling to three sisters. Their parents were Opal Lee and Harold Kraft. While Harold worked as a production worker, Opal worked a number of jobs to help keep the family finances afloat. Opal loved her youngest child and only son Randy very much. His sisters all treated him wonderfully, loving the little baby boy that made them all smile as he toddled throughout the house. The family was very religious, and their parents took great care in making sure their children were raised with the religion. Other than some minor injuries due to being a clumsy child, Randy Kraft had a normal, healthy upbringing. His father tended to pay more attention to Randy's sisters than him, but all in all, I doubt that had much to do with how Kraft ended up. His father gave the girls more attention, but Randy was not considered neglected, and his mom was very active in his life. As Randy grew older, he showed signs of high intelligence, even attending accelerated classes in 1957 when he was between 11 and 12 years old. As he grew, Randy Kraft became involved with sports and politics. His interest in politics grew, and Randy considered himself a Republican with dreams of becoming a U.S. Senator. Throughout his junior high and high school years, Randy was likable, popular, and a very good student, bringing home mostly A's on a regular basis. After graduating high school in June of 1963, Kraft enrolled at Claremont Men's College, working on a Bachelor Arts degree in economics. Although he was known to occasionally date women, Kraft would eventually come out as a homosexual, and there are reports saying that during his high school years, people suspected as much, even though he still kept his sexual orientation a secret at the time. His family had no idea. During his time at Claremont, Kraft enrolled in the ROTC, or Reserved Officers Training Camp, a course for training commissioned officers in the U.S. Armed Forces, and he also supported the Vietnam War, attending demonstrations and pro-war rallies. He was a strong supporter of the then Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater. This only lasted a short time, as Kraft later stated that he was only into the Republican politics to make his parents happy. He soon did a complete 180, becoming a full-fledged left-wing liberal. It was around this time that Randy Kraft started dating men. Kraft got a job as a bartender at a local gay bar in Garden Grove, California. As it turned out, Randy had been visiting gay bars since he graduated high school. He didn't necessarily like the fact that his family didn't know about his secret life, but at the same time didn't know how to tell them he was gay. So, in hopes that his family would just catch on, he started bringing his gay friends and lovers home to meet his family. This was in vain though, as they never caught on and thought all these men were just friends. This forced Randy to come out to his family. His father was not at all thrilled with the news. His mother and sisters were also confused as to why he was the way he was, but grew to accept him nonetheless. But I'm jumping ahead. It was during this time in 1963, while he worked as a bartender, that the problems started to arise. His sexual urges were growing stronger, and he started picking up male prostitutes. This eventually led Kraft to propositioning an undercover police officer and getting himself arrested. Luckily for Kraft, he was a first-time offender with no criminal record, so these charges were dropped and Kraft got away free. This time. By 1967, Kraft was almost a completely different person than he was before college. He had grown out his hair, grew a mustache, and his political beliefs had shifted completely as he was now working with the Democratic Party and on the Robert Kennedy campaign. He started suffering from severe stomach pains and migraines that he would try to treat with pain medication and Valium. Taking these medications with alcohol, he quickly became addicted to the drugs. Now, with his job, sexual exploits, and campaigning, his grades began to slip, and school was no longer a priority for Randy. His party lifestyle, on the other hand, was. Now frequently using drugs and trolling for prostitutes on a regular basis, this caused Randy not to graduate on time, having to retake some courses due to his sudden negligent attitude towards school. He was more interested in partying, drugs, and buying prostitutes. Gambling was also a huge problem. Once he did finally graduate in February of 1968 from CMC, Kraft decided to try his hand in the military. Passing the Air Force background and aptitude check, he joined the U.S. Air Force and was stationed in Edwards Air Force Base in Kern County, California. He was put on duty to supervise the painting of aircrafts. It was during his time in the Air Force that Kraft officially came out as homosexual. And although, like stated before, his mother and sisters came to accept his new lifestyle, Randy himself became more distant from the family. He was also discharged from the military in 1969, citing, quote, medical reasons. But Kraft is convinced that he was discharged because of his newly public sexual preference. He then moved back in with his parents, his sisters fully grown and all married or moved away. He returned to his job at the bar, as well as getting on at a local warehouse operating forklifts. Around this time in 1971, Randy enrolled at Long Beach State University to study to become a teacher. It is here he struck up a relationship with a man named Jeff Graves. Graves has been credited as the person who introduced Kraft to the bondage and S&M lifestyle, as well as enhancing sex by using drugs and multiple partners at the same time. They were together for 4 years and ended their relationship in 1975 due to the open relationship that Kraft was losing interest in, but Graves wanted to continue. Later, in 1976, Kraft met Jeff Seelig while at a party. Seelig was a lot younger than Kraft, 10 years younger to be exact. This time it was Kraft who introduced Seelig into the scene of drugs, gay bars, and bondage. Kraft and Seelig would also cruise a marine base that was nearby, looking to engage someone into a threesome. Kraft was able to land a well-paying job with Lear Siegler Industries. This led to the couple buying a house together. But the age difference and different personalities soon took their toll, and the couple ended their relationship in 1982. A little after 1 a.m. on May 14, 1983, officers stopped a car that was driving erratically, swerving in and out of lanes. The driver was obviously intoxicated. After a short chase, the swerving car finally pulled over. The driver immediately exited the car and started walking toward the officer. This was Randy Kraft. As Randy walked over, the officer noticed Randy's pants were undone. He was put into cuffs after failing a field sobriety test. Then, walking back to Kraft's car, officers saw there was a passenger, leaned back in the seat, and he appeared sleeping or unconscious. Attempts to rouse the passenger were unsuccessful because he was not sleeping, he was not unconscious, he was deceased. The officers removed a jacket that was covering the victim's neck and saw that he had been strangled. His genitals were also exposed from his undone pants, his hands bound at the wrists in front of him. The victim was Terry Lee Gambrell, age 25. This prompted a full-scale search of the vehicle. They also ran a background check of Kraft, revealing that he was charged with lewd conduct twice. After the first incident in '63, he was arrested for lewd conduct with another male. He spent a little less than a week in jail for this and had to pay a small fine. The police then took to searching Kraft's car, where they found over 45 colored photos of different young men. All of them were sexual in nature, but most of them seemed to feature an unconscious male in one form or another. They've come to realize now that most of them were probably deceased in the photos. Inside a briefcase found in the car contained what looked like a list of random words, or 60 plus random coded words. It wouldn't take long to find out what this list was. It was a murder list. Randy had been listing his victims in code to keep track of them. At least, that's what people believe. Not all of the coded words on the list were actually decoded, but many were. Police also searched Kraft's residence. There they would find a mountain of evidence, including more photos of seemingly dead men, some believed to be known missing persons, clothing belonging to missing persons, fibers that connected Kraft to other crime scenes, and later they would also find Kraft's fingerprints that would link him to different murders. As I stated earlier, some of the words on Kraft's quote kill sheet were decoded, and they were definitely murder victims. But there are still a lot of things on that list that have not been decoded. It is worth mentioning that there is sadly very little information available on the victims other than their names and some bits about their background. And Kraft's list of victims is so random that it was very hard to decipher. But the ones that were deciphered made law officials' blood run cold. Kraft's first known assault on another person happened in March of 1970. Joseph Fancher was a 13-year-old runaway. He had actually just ran away that day. While the new runaway strolled along Huntington Beach, he bummed a smoke from Kraft and explained his situation to him. Kraft then offered to let Fancher stay at his apartment while Fancher figured out his situation. He sweetened the deal by also offering Fancher sex with a woman. This, of course, was just a ruse. Once they were inside Randy's apartment, Kraft started to show Fancher pictures. They were black and white pornographic photos, some of Kraft engaging in sex with other men. Fancher has said that at this point, Kraft offered him drugs. Fancher says they were red pills, quote, that he accepted and took with alcohol, and that they made him very drowsy. After the pills and alcohol had taken their effect, Joseph says he was conscious, but he could not defend himself. He has been quoted saying that he felt like a rag doll, while Randy forced himself upon the young runaway. The first thing forced upon Joseph was oral copulation. This escalated to sodomy, then Kraft threatening to kill Joseph Fancher if he tried to escape as Kraft left the room for a brief period. Kraft returned and raped Joseph again, slapping him in the face, leaving bruises and marks. When Kraft was finished with Joseph, he, for one reason or another, left the room long enough for Joseph to get his things together and leave. But Joseph was still so drugged up he was stumbling around the street, causing someone to get him to a hospital. When he spoke with police about the incident, Joseph Fancher did not tell them he was sexually assaulted. He later stated that this was because he figured no one would believe his story, and at that time, they probably didn't. But after his stomach was pumped and he was cleared to let go from the hospital, Fancher took the police back to Kraft's residence. He had said that he only wanted to grab the shoes he left there, but pressed no charges. Joseph, as well as a couple officers, unlawfully entered Kraft's home while he was away to retrieve the shoes. That's when the officers found evidence that Joseph may have been telling the truth after all. There were multiple drugs made out to a Doris Lane. There were also empty alcohol bottles scattered everywhere. The police believed that Joseph may have been telling the truth, but the officers made a crucial mistake. They entered Kraft's house without a warrant and found these items under illegal circumstances. Therefore, there was no way they could report any of it, and that was the last it was brought up until Kraft's trial almost 20 years later. Joseph Fancher, though badly scarred for life, survived his encounter with Randy Kraft. A lot of others would not be so fortunate. When police found the list, or scorecard as it has come to be known, in May of 1983, they initially weren't aware of what it was they found, though some officers immediately suspected. But once it was decided that it was indeed a list of Kraft's victims, a team of experts went to work decoding it. It was then that they were able to tie Kraft to several unsolved homicides. Though a good portion of the list remains unsolved, a good portion is believed to have been decoded. It is believed that Kraft made the transition to murder in 1971, when the body of 30-year-old Wayne Duquette was found discarded near the Ortega Highway, a local highway that runs off of I-5. His body was so decomposed that it was impossible to find signs of any foul play. They were, however, able to test his blood alcohol level, which was at a lethal amount, so they determined his death to be death by acute alcohol poisoning. Duquette was also a bartender at a gay bar named The Stable. Stable was the first word on Kraft's list. The day after Christmas in 1972, another body was found discarded beside the 405 freeway. Due to some skid burns and some road rash found on the body, it was determined that he was thrown from a moving vehicle at a high rate of speed. It was also revealed during an autopsy of the body that the victim was bound by the wrist and ankles and his face had been badly beaten by a blunt instrument. The cause of death, though, was determined to be strangulation. He was also bitten severely in several places, had deep scratches on his scrotum, and a sock had been stuffed into his rectum. He had also been redressed. This man's name was Edward Daniel Moore, a Marine based at Camp Pendleton. The letters EDM were number 3 on the list. Kraft was connected to Moore's murders through a harmonica instruction booklet found at Kraft's residence during the search. The harmonica was known to belong to Moore. After this, there would be some John Does found. One of them not only dismembered, but his body parts were literally scattered throughout town. The police were able to find everything except the man's hands. On February 6, 1973, a nude corpse was discovered in an area in Huntington Beach known as Airplane Hill. The body was of a male somewhere between 17 to 25 years old. The cause of death was either suffocation or major blood loss. Ligature marks were found around the wrist and ankles. He had been sodomized and his genitals had been removed. Airplane Hill was number 5 on Randy Kraft's list. He was also charged for this murder. Since Kraft has never confessed to any of the murders, the identity of this victim went unknown for 22 years. But, due to advancements in forensic technology, the identity of Kevin Clark Bailey, age 17 to 18, was discovered in 1995. One of the more disturbing attacks, in my opinion, was on James Dale Reeves. After saying goodbye to some friends and leaving Ripple's bar, Reeves was never seen alive again. Randy Kraft was a frequent customer at Ripple's, located in Long Beach. The club was later renamed Club Ripple's and was closed down in 2019. But I digress. The next time James Reeves was seen, he was very much deceased. He was almost nude, sodomized violently, beaten, was posed in a Y position with a wooden stick 4 feet long, 3 inches around, forcefully jammed into his rectum. He was found off the San Diego freeway. So much was done to him that they could not determine the cause of death. They found his car still parked at Ripple's, which may indicate that he met Kraft somewhere between the door and his car, and ended up going home with Kraft. Twiggy was number 9 on Randy Kraft's list. James Dale Reeves was only 19 years old. Now it's worth mentioning that it was entries to the list like this one that had investigators questioning whether or not this whole list was to be taken seriously. With some of the entries so cryptic and difficult to understand, there were also entries like this one that was simply the victim's name. In this case, it was Vincent Cruz Mastas, written on the list simply as Vince M. His body was found in the San Bernardino Mountains at the bottom of a ravine on December 29, 1973. He had been freshly shaven on both his head and his face. A straw or pencil-sized object was forced into his urethra. His hands were removed. He had been emasculated and mutilated, and he had a sock shoved into his rectum. He was still wearing the other sock. The official cause of death was strangulation. It was found out that Kraft lived very close to Vincent, who, at the time of his death, was 23 years old. He was a student at Long Beach State University. Vince M. was number 10 on Randy Kraft's list. On February 6, 1973, another nude male body was found off the Terminal Island Freeway, which was located in Wilmington. Although the body remains a John Doe, there has been some speculation that this victim worked as a male prostitute. A prostitute that frequented a spot that Kraft was known to hang around in. Not a lot of information is available on this particular victim, as Kraft has confessed to nothing to this day and maintains that he is innocent, so the John Doe victims' backgrounds are very slim to none. What they do know, though, is that he was strangled to death due to deep ligature marks around his neck, and again, a sock was forced into his rectum. They suspect that this John Doe was around 18 years old. Wilmington was number 11 on Randy Kraft's list. The fully clothed body of Thomas Paxton Lee was found August 3, 1974 on a pier. The pier was in Long Beach Harbor near an oil field area. The cause of death was strangulation. There is not a lot of information available on the details of this, but it is known that Lee would hang around Granada Beach and Belmont Shores Bluff. Both are areas that Kraft was known to go looking for one-night stands. Thomas Paxton Lee was 25 years old. Pier 2 was number 13 on Randy Kraft's list. On January 4, 1975, the body of John William Laris was found in the water at Sunset Beach. Laris was seen exiting a bus while carrying a pair of skates. It is thought that he was heading towards Ripple's Bar, a place we have discussed that Kraft frequents regularly. When his body was found, officers noticed 2 different sets of footprints in the sand. This indicated to them that Laris was carried to the water and dumped by not only 1, but 2 people. John William Laris was only 17 years old. Skates was number 15 on Randy Kraft's list. Keith David Crotwell and Kent May were both seen leaving with Kraft on March 30th, 1975 near the Belmont Plaza Pool. Only one of them would make it back alive. May has told police that Kraft offered them drugs and alcohol when they got into Kraft's Mustang. He then said that he fell unconscious in the backseat of Kraft's car due to the mixture. There were witnesses that say they saw May physically pushed out of the car in a parking lot and Kraft drove away with Crotwell. On May 8, 1975, the severed head of Keith Crotwell was located in a jetty at Long Beach. The rest of his body, minus his hands, would later be found on October 18th near El Toro. His death, even after his dismembered body was found, was ruled an accidental drowning. But Kraft was eventually tried and convicted for this crime due to advanced forensic evidence. When the head of Crotwell was found, May and his friends went out to locate the Mustang they were in. They found it less than a mile from where they lived. They got the license plate number to police, who ran it and saw that it was registered to Randy Kraft. Upon interrogation, Kraft at first denied ever seeing the 2 boys. But once he was back at the police station, he opened up a bit, saying that he did in fact pick up the boys, and that he dropped May back off and left with Crotwell. He then claimed he had car troubles and left Crotwell in the car as Kraft went for gasoline. Kraft claims when he returned, Crotwell was gone. David Keith Crotwell was only 19 years old when he died. Parking lot was number 19 on Randy Kraft's list. Unfortunately, very little info can be found on this next victim. Robert Avila's body was found July 29, 1982 in Echo Park off the Hollywood Freeway. He was known by most who knew him to wear overly excessive amounts of deodorant. His cause of death was strangulation. Deodorant was number 20 on Randy Kraft's list. Robert Avila was only 16 years old. Another body was found right beside Robert Avila's. On July 29, 1982, the body of Raymond Davis was found strangled to death. The only real information available on this incident was that Raymond was actually visiting relatives at the time of his murder and wasn't close to home. His dog ran away and Raymond went into the park to look for the lost animal. It is believed this is where he encountered Kraft. Raymond Davis of Pittsburgh, California was only 13 years old when he died. dog was number 21 on Randy Kraft's list. On June 2, 1984, the body of Malcolm Eugene Little was found along Highway 86. Little was dropped off by his brother, who was a trucker, on May 27, 1974 at the Garden Grove San Diego Freeway interchange. Malcolm Little was from Alabama and was planning to hitchhike back to his hometown. When he was found, his body had been posed, he was emasculated, and the branch of a tree was forcefully inserted into his rectum. The official cause of death was strangulation. Malcolm Eugene Little was only 20 years old. Teen trucker was number 22 on Randy Kraft's list. Sometime before his murder, Ronnie Jean Weeb got a flat tire and parked in Los Alamitos at the Sportsman Bar. Or perhaps he was already in the bar and came out to a flat tire. Either way, his car was found at this location after his body was found on July 28, 1973. The body was located on the on-ramp to the freeway running through San Diego. Again, a sock was found in his rectum. He was repeatedly hit with a blunt object over the head, fracturing his skull. He had bite marks on his genitals and his stomach. He was hung upside down during his torture and thrown from a moving vehicle, fully clothed except for his shoes. Official cause of death was ligature strangulation. Ronnie Jean Weeb was only 20 years old. 7th Street was number 24 on Randy Kraft's list. The body of Gregory Wallace Jolly was found September 4th, 1979 in the area of Lake Arrowhead. Jolly had a reputation for wearing Marine clothes and telling people he was in the Marines. This was his mistake, as Kraft would very often hunt for exactly that, Marines. It is unknown how Gregory died, but he had been beheaded, his legs were removed, and he was emasculated and mutilated. The police found a sketch pad that belonged to Jolly in Kraft's residence while they conducted their search, linking him to Kraft. Gregory Wallace Jolly was only 20 years old. Lakes MC was number 25 on Randy Kraft's list. Roger E. Dickerson was a Marine at Camp Pendleton. He was last seen on June 20th, 1974, leaving a bar. He had told witnesses that he had planned to head out to Los Angeles by hitchhiking his way there. On June 22nd, 1974, his body was found at Laguna Beach. His autopsy results revealed what had happened to him. He had been sodomized and mutilated, his genitals and left nipple had been chewed off, and high levels of diazepam and alcohol were found in his system. The official cause of death was strangulation. Roger E. Dickerson was only 22 years old. MC Laguna was number 26 on Randy Kraft's list. On January 17, 1975, Craig Victor Jonate's body was found next to the Golden Sails Hotel and Bar in Long Beach. Unfortunately, again, very little is known about Jonates. It is not known where he was from. What they do know is the cause of death was strangulation and he was fully clothed when he was found. Craig Victor Jonates was only 24 years old. Golden Sails was number 27 on Randy Kraft's list. On April 16, 1978, the body of Scott Michael Hughes, another Marine from Camp Pendleton, was found off an on-ramp called Euclid Street. Not a lot is known about his background, but when his body was found, he had been emasculated and had a high dose of diazepam in his system, which is by now a Kraft trademark. His body was redressed, but it was missing shoes. The official cause of death was strangulation. Randy Kraft was convicted of killing Hughes, due to rug fibers found both on Hughes's body and at Kraft's residence during the initial police search. Scott Michael Hughes was only 18 years old. Euclid was number 28 on Randy Kraft's list. You may remember earlier when I spoke of a John Doe whose remains were found scattered around town. This was that John Doe, police suspect. His right leg was found in Wilmington on the freeway. His left leg was found behind a bar in Sunset Beach. The torso was found on Almeida Street in Henry Ford, and his head was located in Long Beach. His hands, though, were never found. He was also emasculated and mutilated with his eyelids removed, probably so he had to watch the torture being put on him. The official cause of death was strangulation. John Doe was determined to be around 52 years old. Hothoff head was number 29 on Randy Kraft's list. On August 29, 1970, another John Doe, known as John Doe number 299, but I won't be referring to that number because even though John Doe is not his real name, it seems better than being reduced to a number, was found dumped in a dumpster that was located at Union 76 station. It is not known what killed him, but his head, legs, and arms had been removed. Only the left leg, torso, and head were found. John Doe's age was not discovered. 76 was number 30 on Randy Kraft's list. Friends and witnesses have said that Gary Wayne Cordova, originally from Pasadena, had gone off hitchhiking to Oceanside and that he was always talking about going to Big Sur, a vast mountainous area of the central coast of California. On August 12, 1974, his body was found in Orange County, dumped into an embankment. His body was dressed minus shoes and socks. Official cause of death was acute alcohol and diazepam intoxication, another mixture that was turning up a lot in the victims tied to this list. Gary Wayne Cordova was only 23 years old. Big Sur was number 32 on Kraft's list. It would easily take another hour or so to go through the rest of the list, and though I would like to touch on the whole thing, it's just not possible with the time I have left, but I do want to touch on a couple more. Mark Howard Hall of Santa Ana was last seen leaving a New Year's Eve party in San Juan Capistrano. It is unknown how he ended up with Kraft. On January 3, 1976, his body was found in the Santiago Canyon in the Bedford Peak area. He was tied to a tree, emasculated and mutilated. His eyelids and eyeballs, as well as his genitals, had been severely burned with what looked to be a car's cigarette lighter. His genitals were removed and stuffed into his anus. Some sort of plastic object had been forced into his urethra, stabbing his bladder in the process. He had giant, deep cuts running down the entire length of his legs, done with either glass or a knife. The official cause of death was acute alcohol poisoning as well as suffocation. Dirt and leaves had been forced down his throat. It is believed that Mark Hall was alive during the duration of his torture. He was only 22 years old. New Year's Eve was number 37 on Randy Kraft's list. Kraft was convicted of this murder. Just hours after being released from jail on a misdemeanor charge, the body of Roland Gerald Young was found near the San Diego freeway. When his body was found, he had been redressed, but upon investigation, it was found that he had been emasculated. Roland Young was only 23 years old and is one of the victims Kraft was convicted of killing. Jail Out was number 39 on Randy Kraft's list. On February 12, 1983, the bodies of Jeffrey Allen Nelson and Roger James Duvall, both of Buena Park, were found in two separate areas. Jeffrey's body was found nude on the on-ramp to the Garden Grove Freeway, while Roger's body was found in a ravine located in the Angels National Forest. Official cause of death for Jeffrey Nelson was strangulation, though he was also emasculated and thrown from a moving vehicle. Roger Duvall's cause of death was compression of the neck, and he had been sodomized. His body was found to be redressed. Jeffrey Allen Nelson was only 18 years old, and Roger James Duvall Jr. was only 20 years old. During the search of Kraft's residence, police found a photo of Duvall, and in the photo, he appeared deceased. 2-in-1 Beach was number 44 on Kraft's list. He was convicted of both crimes. Robert Wyatt Loggins, a Marine based in Tucson, was last seen in Huntington Beach near the pier. On September 30th, 1980, his body was found inside a trash bag and tossed into a housing project. During his autopsy, there were signs that a sock had been shoved into his rectum, another now common staple of Randy Kraft's crimes. Loggins had a large tattoo on his arm. The official cause of death was acute intoxication. On the night Kraft was caught with the body in his car, a photo of Robert Loggins was found underneath the floor mat. The photos appeared to show a deceased Loggins, nude and posed. He was one of the victims Kraft was convicted of killing. Robert Loggins was only 19 years old. MCHB tattoo was number 46 on Randy Kraft's list. The trial of Randy Kraft began on September 26, 1988 before Judge Donald A. McCartan. A trial that lasted 13 months and is still the most expensive trial in Orange County history. On November 29, 1989, Judge McCartan sentenced Randy Kraft to death, a sentence that was upheld in 2000. Kraft still waits on death row to this day. It is worth mentioning that both physical and circumstantial evidence has shown the strong possibility that Kraft had an accomplice in at least some of the murders. The main suspect at the time was Kraft's ex-lover, Jeff Graves. One telling aspect of this theory is when they were questioning Graves while he was sick and dying of AIDS. He was quoted as saying, "I'm really not going to pay for it, you know." He died of AIDS on July 27, 1987. He was never charged with any crimes.
Due to the vast amount of victims, both on the list and not, it would easily take me another hour to get through all the horrendous things that Randy Kraft has done. But if you want to know more on the entire story and in full detail, I highly recommend reading Angel of Darkness, written by Dennis McDougall. You can also find another documentary right here on YouTube in the channel Serial Killer Documentaries. Check them out. I've watched a lot of them, and they were a huge inspiration to me. Thank you for joining me today, and if you found this interesting or informative, perhaps you'd like to subscribe to the channel so you can get notified when the next episode is available. Either way, thank you for spending some time with us today, and I'll be back very soon to continue covering the very worst of the worst. See you next time on Lesser Known Monsters.